Working Class Beer Reviews. It's looking at Brooklyn Brewing Fonio Rising Pale Ale. This is based out of Brooklyn, New York on 11th Street from what I could find on the website. Easy drinking pale ale with fresh citrus aroma and notes of tropical fruit, brewed with Fonio, an ancient West African super grain renowned for its resilience and unique flavor. So before I get to conversation about this, I will pop it. I've got my church key. I don't know if you can see this or not. This is a Busch Bavarian beer church key. So this is fairly old. I was able to acquire this a while back. I've used this before in videos. So church key. Oh, church key to can. Split a little bit. I've got my little Jugs glass here. Jugs is a liquor store here in the area that I reside now, in Southwest Missouri, on 20th Street. It says Jugs Liquor and Micro Brew. Kind of has like the little Belgian glass look to it. So I figured it'd be fitting for this. And this is where I acquired this beer from. Let's take a look at the date here. 8/31/2025. So I think what it was is they were not able to get credit back, but obviously they aren't going to sell past date beer at full price. So I was able to get this at a steep discount. I just won't disclose the discount, but I did pay money for it. And, but they were just like, yeah, take as much as you want. So I've got a few other beers that I was able to get for like a bundle type price. So, but I figured, with it being in a can, it's not going to be that big a deal. Oh, look at that. I've never had anything from Brooklyn Brewery. I probably never will, because something tells me they just don't distribute much in this area. And this is probably something the distributor got a good price on. It's very golden. It's a light golden if it's a pale ale. Some pale ales are kind of closer, a little darker in tone, closer to copper. Not quite copper, but a little closer to copper. This is pretty light colored for a pale ale. Fonio, so if it's some sort of super grain, I'm guessing it's like quinoa, amaranth, teff, spelt, millet, something, some sort of like a small grain that's not widely used, but is, used in other countries. Before I get into what I read on the website, let's just go ahead and I have not tried this yet. This is a completely blind tasting for me. It's got some hop flavor. I think it was STRATA and CITRA hops, or STRATA and CITRA hops. Well, yeah, that's what it was. 2 hops. It did not give a malt variety. I'm guessing some sort of 2-row barley malt and something else, and obviously Fonio, West African grain. And I have no problem with that. I think it's cool if they include other types of grains in the mash or whatever. Tastes like a good pale ale. Definitely more of a citrus type hop instead of a grassy hop. It tastes good. It's not real punchy. I'm used to and maybe that's probably more along the lines of like what original pale ales were. They were a little more flat and thin. The more mass-produced ones, like from England and stuff like that. When you get into your craft pale ales, like your Sierra Nevada, your Boulevard Brewing Company, your Honkers Ale, and stuff like that. That's like an ESB style from Goose Island. They're gonna be a little more character forward. This one, it's not that it doesn't have character. It's just not as in your face about it. So much more subdued. definitely more of the citrusy type malts, or I mean hops. So yeah, Fonio, yeah, like I said, it's probably one of those like really tiny seed type grains. I've used some of those in my bread baking before. I got a hold of some stuff from Bob's Red Mill that had teff, and it was like some itty bitty, like the smallest, like if you're a biblical person, you talk about the size of a mustard seed. I felt like it was smaller than a mustard seed. It was almost, just microscopic looking, looked like a seed tick, like a bag full of seed ticks, but it was like an Ethiopian grain or something like that. And I remember using that in like bread baking and stuff like that. So I'm cool with that. When you look at the website though, and obviously if you know anything about New York, like New York City area and the 5 boroughs, it's not a cheap place to live. Manhattan, especially, Brooklyn's probably second closest to being expensive. What is it? Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, the Bronx. Yep, the 5 boroughs. Bronx. Forget about the Bronx. A lot of them just sound like they're just real tough areas, but it's like, how do you afford to live there? It's like, but I think there's a lot of like rent control and stuff like that. But if you live in a place like what was it? Upper West Side, Soho, Manhattan. I don't know. That's south of Houston, Manhattan. But anyway, it's known for being just like astronomical cost of living. It's ridiculous. Kind of like London, like central London and LA, and many of the large cities in the United States. They're just ridiculous. You pretty much have to be a multimillionaire just to thrive there. Otherwise, someone's paying for you and you're doing something for them. But from what I could tell, they produce a great product, but the main thing that they project on their website is activism. And that's kind of played out, In the past decade, activism has been this like virtuous thing that a lot of people want to project, like, oh, I'm so good and I'm doing all these things to help other people, but you're doing things that other people can't afford to do because you obviously have some sort of venture capital behind you. Someone's flipping the bill. A lot of these things aren't grassroots. I mean, some things can be, yes, community-wise, but a lot of things, and the fact that this is discounted way back is probably because the money's being lost now. A lot of that stuff that was activism driven in the past year or so is starting to decline because a lot of that venture there's not a lot of money coming back from it. People that get this money from people and they produce a product based off of activism, they're not getting money back from it. And that's sad. And but I think it's just a bad business model overall. I think if you want to do something activism based, it needs to be a charity and not a business. You can't base a business off of your activism. It just doesn't work, because you'll soon find out the people that are willing to support your cause aren't willing to give their hard-earned money. Whereas if it's a charity, people will give to a charity if it's for a cause that they truly believe in. But it doesn't always involve like buying a product, Sometimes they say like, oh, if you buy such and such, the proceeds will go to this. And, that works to an extent, but that's not how you run a business. So it's a bad business model to be an activist first. And I'm sorry, I'm not doing that to be divisive or offensive. It's just, that's just how a lot of stuff is played out. It's common sense, You give people what they want. And what I wanted was some cheap beer, and I got it. I did get some cheap beer. And I have no idea. I've never had Fonio before, but I'm cool with it. If I came across Fonio as a grain, I would try to do something with it. Make a porridge, grind it up into flour and make bread with, incorporate it into bread dough. That's super cool. There's nothing wrong with that. The earth gives us so many wonderful things that we can enjoy and appreciate, and it should be at our disposal. It's to help us thrive, you know. And I think that's awesome. I think that was actually the coolest part of this was the grain that they used. So, you know, maybe Brooklyn Brewery is thriving up in New York, but I don't see it here in the southern Midwest being that strong of a seller. You know, we have so many other selections, and you know, it's not that it's a great beer. It tastes fine. I can only imagine. It's probably, if I had to imagine, it's probably like $10 for a 6-pack. For a lot of smaller craft beers, and craft beers in themselves are in a decline, just because the money's running out. A lot of these things, like I was saying, they were backed by venture capital and hoping to get a return on investment, and maybe they did for a few years, but as that investment declines and they're just not getting the money back out of it that they once were, they're going to start pulling their, you know, their contributions away from it. They'll be like, okay, I'm not going to give you so much anymore. And then that makes it to where if they're not able to just circulate their funds from sales and continue growing, then it's just not a growing business model. You know, I'm not even a business person myself, but I think that's a very oversimplified way of looking at it. You know, when people are basing a model off of current trend or favorite thing right now, and lots of people are like, yeah, I want to be a part of that because that's what's cool. That's very temporary and it's very short-sighted. You know, that's not a long-term way of, you know, solidifying a base for a business. So, you know, I hope they continue thriving. I really do. You know, but what they're putting on their websites, like, it's more about, you know, the things they care about and feel than the product itself. You know, it didn't even give me a date like when this brewery started. So I don't know how old this brewery is. It may be a lot older than I think it is. You know, I don't know if it's been repurchased by anybody else. So, but shout out to Brooklyn Brewery. And yeah, Independent Craft Brewers Association. So they are part of that. That's that little label. You probably see that there with the upside down bottle. You know, that means they're, you know, there must be an alliance or something they can get. I don't know if that helps them with distribution, for funds. I don't know what that really does. But it's cool. Oh man, that's a weak burp. You know, last video I did, I got a good one at the tail end. Still weak. I just, you know, I got it. I wanted to review it. A lot of people may not see it, and if you do, great. If you don't, you know, I don't know if you live around the New York area and you see this, give it a try. It's a fine pale ale. You know, it's not over the top great, but you know, it's got a kind of a cool X factor about it, and I think that's what some things need. Is like, what sets yourself apart from other things that make it unique, make it different. So the West African super grain Fonio, Fonio. Look that up, Google it, and you'll learn about it. That's what's the X factor in this is. You know, it's kind of got that. Remember in the 90s, like the late 90s, when that kind of like, you know, world music and stuff like that. And that was like mid 90s, stuff like that. The world dance music, Enya and stuff like that was popular. That's what that motif kind of reminds me of. You see those paintings and stuff like that. That's kind of what that has going on for. I think it's pretty cool though. But yeah, I don't know. I hope the best for him. I don't rate things. I think it's good. It'd be worth buying once. It's good to check out. I don't regret acquiring it. I'm glad that I got it for the really super cheap price that I did. That makes it way more working class than anything. So, thanks for watching, and let me know if you know anything about this, and I will see you guys later.